I'm Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I discuss one movie worthy of the coveted Midnight Movie Showtime. We're happy you could join us for our Grindhouse Institute's 100th episode, all about They Live. Following the success of Halloween, John Carpenter became a sought-after director in Hollywood and made a string of studio films. However, these bigger-budget, more expensive films often struggled at the box office. So Carpenter turned to his old, reliable friend, indie filmmaking, where he would have lower budgets, but complete creative control. This period led to two of his finest works, Prince of Darkness and today's film, They Live. While both films were parables for social ills of the day, we'll save Prince of Darkness for another show. They Live was made in response to the horrors of the Reagan administration that Carpenter was seeing all around him. The violent austerity and upward transfer of wealth was being sold to the public as a good thing by a charismatic movie star. Carpenter made a film that tears off that mask and lets everyone see what's really going on. John Nada is struggling to get by when he stumbles upon a shocking global conspiracy. After discovering a pair of special sunglasses, he's able to see the truth. An alien force has been secretly controlling humanity through subliminal messaging. Can he expose the alien plot? Will that epic fight scene ever end? And what happens when he runs out of bubblegum? Roddy Piper, Keith David, Meg Foster, and Peter Jason don their Hoffman lenses to uncover the truth in John Carpenter's 1988 film, They Live. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. Please enjoy.
Their tongues to deceive. The venom of snakes is under their lips. Our human spirit is corrupted. Why do we worship greed? Wake up! They're all about you, all around you.
All right, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. I'm Brian Foster, and with me as always is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
I'm giving you a choice. You either put on these glasses or you start eating that trash can.
Not this year.
So good. This is a very important day today on the show. Today we're talking about one movie on the Midnight Movie episode or version of the show. And we not only have a great movie to discuss, but this is also a very special episode for the Grindhouse Institute. It is our 100th episode.
Look at that. Hey!
Zing, 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 zing.
We did it.
And now to celebrate our show going fully into syndication, we're going to be discussing a film.
I'm demanding $1 million an episode from now on.
Exactly, yeah. We're demanding a lot, so we might not even be here next year.
The writer, it's very complicated. Brown M&Ms, the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to get into all the business.
Well, this is a union job.
But we're going to be discussing a film today that really started it all, I'd say. Started the Grindhouse Institute.
Yeah.
Jeremy, I don't know if you had anything to say about that, but at that time this is pre-COVID, and I was working on building a different podcast about John Carpenter films, and we were coming up to They Live in the order there, and I knew you were a big fan of Carpenter, and we had always been quoting They Live and such at work,
right.
and so we had you on, and you were nice enough to join us, but I guess unluckily at the time, luckily now, but the guy I was working with on the podcast bailed, so it was just Jeremy and I on that podcast. And that's kind of the origin of the Grindhouse crew. That was the first time we got to actually discuss a flick, and so we brought that movie back.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a little inside baseball there for you. I mean, it's kind of, we're bringing it back to how this podcast got started. I mean, it was, you and I had a really good time on that one, and I think later on when that show, how do I say it politely? Let's say when that show
we were canceled.
was canceled. When that show was canceled, you and I were talking, and it was like, hey, why don't we do this and do a slightly different thing? And here we are, 100 episodes and close to 300 movies later. 4 years in the tank, and
we've only had a few midnight movies out of that group, so it's been like 3 movies at a time. So it's
pretty
we're
much
talking 300 movies, pretty much.
Almost. Yeah.
And I mean, if you count them all as the anthologies, we've probably surpassed 300.
Yeah, we've definitely gotten gotten our money's worth.
We got our money's worth just putting this movie on. We haven't talked about this one yet anyway, and it's just the best to talk about because it's such a great one.
Well, it's funny. So on your last show, it was all John Carpenter, and then it took us several years to even do a John Carpenter movie. And it's been a hot second since we've done one here, and this is easily top 5 Carpenter. It is one of the best, and it's in a body of work that is so fucking good that like it doesn't even reach number 1, and it easily could with any other director
for sure.
And it's one of those things where it's like it brought this show into being. And Brian and I have done this episode slightly before, so it is funny kind of retreading some territory, but we haven't done it for you, so we're gonna hop into it.
I pulled up my old script just so I didn't miss anything from the last time. My old transcript. You still
had that? Yeah.
If you remember, we had much bigger production on that show. I had the person taking notes and all that.
Yeah.
I don't even think we had good mics at that point.
Interns and
$30 mics.
Yeah.
Chesterfield's over on 4th Street. They got hot food and showers. I'm going that way if you want me to show you.
So let's get into John Carpenter's They Live. Was this 1987?
88, I think.
88. So
because 87, this is back to back. So
there we go.
This is like let's.
This is very important.
This is important. So let's set the scene here. John Carpenter made the world's craziest student film that turned into a feature, Dark Star.
Still a badass movie too.
Yeah. Off that, he had in between getting that released and getting onto his next project, he wrote like 4,000 scripts. Assault was the next one that got made. Very
awesome.
Small indie movie, decent success. He then got a TV movie, shot that. It was like a week later, started shooting Halloween. As that was going to release, he was in the middle of shooting Elvis, the TV movie. And then it was like, wow, okay, Halloween took off like a rocket. After a couple weeks, it was like word of mouth, and then boom, it took off, right? And then he did The Fog, Escape from New York, and then started getting into his studio period where...
Is that Big Trouble and Little
perhaps
China?
His like first studio period, yeah. So that's like, that's Christine and The Thing and Starman and Big Trouble. And
The Thing is a studio film, that's right.
It was, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
It's wild to think about that now, especially like what is in that movie.
Yeah.
Is nuts. Like, how did that get through the whole
movie is nuts, yeah.
Screening process and all the like suits and bean counters and shit. And it also, unfortunately, that period, it's like Starman was nominated for Academy Awards for certain things, which is old hat to John Carpenter at this point because one of his early short films, Bronco Billy, won a fucking Academy Award.
What the hell? I only found that out by doing this show.
Yeah,
right. When we were like, we watched this. I mean, it's not that great. It's a fine movie, but it's not that great.
It's not that great. Yeah.
When it won the Academy Award, it's kind of shocking.
Yeah. And
not a lot of competition that year for short films.
Perhaps the standards were a little different. It was just like, hey, we got an exposure. We did it.
Yeah, it worked.
And that's what a short film was. But the problem was, with things like The Thing and Big Trouble in Little China,
flops.
Two movies that we think are stone cold classics now. We talk about them in the same breath as some of cinema's best movies.
I believe I've heard perfect film being said several times about The Thing.
For The Thing, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's... I kind of go back and forth myself. It's like, is The Thing his best movie? Is Halloween his best movie?
Right.
It is neck and neck. It's up there.
I think he peaked at The Thing for sure.
And The Thing, 5 days a week, The Thing is definitely the number one that I'll put on that slot. And then, usually I'll kind of flip-flop with
It's
Halloween.
Pretty good to discuss someone's career when you have the choice of his two best movies being literally the two best movies ever made. At least in the horror genre, right? They defined at least the slashers after that. I know it wasn't the first, but he really did solidify that.
And without Halloween, there wouldn't be the slasher genre. I mean, even though yes, things came before that.
No, not like
that. It is what
template setting, blueprint.
Started the whole ball rolling, exactly. But it's like, those movies being stone cold classics, like now cult classics because they were rediscovered on TV in the case of Big Trouble, and home video or VHS or whatever in the case of The Thing, because they didn't perform well at the box office. But because he had a couple of those in a row, and it was like maybe the studio system too was breathing down his neck and crushing his creativity and all these other things, decided to go back to the old indie roots. And we got probably, I don't know, it's maybe number 3.
Tread lightly here. Be careful.
on his list
of
best movies. Prince of Darkness, which is this incredible smaller budget, maybe not fully indie roots, but it is a thing where it the studio system part of it was not there. So back-to-back indie movies, Prince of Darkness and They Live, and they came out back-to-back as well. It was Big Trouble was 86, Prince of Darkness 87, They Live 88.
Wow.
And then that got the ball rolling again to go back into bigger budget movies. What the hell was the next one? Was it the Invisible Man, the one I haven't seen?
Memoirs of an Invisible Man.
Was that next?
That sounds right.
So Invisible Man was next. Whatever you think of it, it was a big studio movie again, and it's like...
Sure. Probably a nice paycheck.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to do something with that one because it seemed like an interesting movie, but yeah, it's not my favorite. It's not his music. Like, there's something that's very un-Carpenter about that movie.
Right. I mean, even though The Thing is technically not his music...
It is a collab, though, isn't it?
Hey, Ennio, why don't you do something like this? And he's like, okay, I'll do that.
Kind of, right? I feel like that's how that discussion went.
Yeah.
But Morricone was kind of getting into that digital or the synthesizer heavier after all of the Old West scores and things like that, right?
Well, because he did a lot of, we think of him, Morricone, that is, as like this, God amongst composers, and it's like his, what's it called, the sort of Man with No Name trilogy, as it became known, the Clint Eastwood spaghetti western with Leone, kind of started his thing at Morricone's career, and then it was he kind of stayed in that sort of low budget, a bunch of giallos or gialli, and then French crime films, like all this stuff, but it was all on a different scale than sort of Hollywood movies, as we're probably thinking of him as being just this very in demand composer. And of course his music is incredible, and
he was no Hans Zimmer, huh?
Influential, but it sort of took him a while to get to that. Even he was like constantly working, but for some smaller movies and things. Anyhow, you're right. The big thing about the first half of Carpenter's career is like it's all his music. Memoirs is not.
No, sounds almost like a very orchestral type thing, very whimsy. Yeah. I want to say like Alan Silvestri type, but I don't want to I'm not tarnishing that. I love his work,
Yeah.
Right.
Most of the time. I remember we were joking about him not quite getting there in Contact sometimes.
Right.
So it's like then the rest of the movies he did after that were all things that he composed, right? It's like Mouth of Madness, Village of the Damned remake, Escape from L.A., Vampires, Ghosts of Mars, and another one I haven't seen, The Ward.
Oh, The Ward, that's what it says. Asylum. Right. I'm like, I haven't seen that one.
And I've also never seen Body Bags either. So. Yeah.
Oh, we should have put that one on for an anthology. We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your problem? I said, what's your problem?
But what's also interesting about this new phase that sort of led us into the very end of the 80s here for Carpenter's career is that, like, after...
Big Trouble?
Big Trouble, thank you.
Big Trouble got into Big Trouble?
After Big Trouble, it's like, he had shot tons of movies with Dean Cundey.
Yeah.
And then
Gary Kibbe came in.
Then yeah, we switched gears to Gary Kibbe, and like then did his next, I don't know what, 6-7 movies with him.
Because at this point, Dean Cundey was Back to the Futuring and moving into the Amblin sphere, right? I mean,
Right.
he's legendary. His visuals are so good. But I thought Kibbe really picked up where he left off. I mean, I think Carpenter's always set the look, right, and the lens, and Cundey would always serve that, and I'm sure Kibbe just did the same thing. That's what a cinematographer should do, right?
Yeah.
I think the cinematography is great in both of these films. I know we're only talking one, but I always think of this and Prince of Darkness as, I know they were shot at this, or at least similar times. I know they came out at similar times, and it feels like they look exactly the same. Like they're totally in the same world, and they're just happening a few blocks from each other, right?
They are sort of literally happening a few blocks from each other. Yeah, and like, and also sort of thematically, yes. And also, there are also a lot of other ties. I know we were joking about the other day when we were talking about, oh, maybe we should combine the two. And
that's why you got me tripped up just now, because we're talking about that.
Well, because it was like, we have, it was, downtown LA.
Peter Jason,
a lot of homeless
Unhoused,
folks, a lot of a church being a central figure in this.
for sure.
And, a giant conspiracy. It's like the movies definitely have a lot in common. It's like,
I feel like this is part of the Apocalypse quadrilogy in a way.
Almost. Like this one isn't quite as...
There's still hope on this one.
Yeah, exactly. As I was saying, it's a little more optimistic, I think, on this one.
Right. At least, we go out
ending.
with like he wins. Yeah. Right, he might give his life, but he does kind of win, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
What's
up, baby?
Hey, what's wrong, baby?
Hey, what's wrong, baby?
There are almost always two tracks to John Carpenter. One is sort of the sort of action thriller, and the other is the horror movie. But because of things like Halloween and The Thing, and he's made some of the best horror movies of all time, we tend to think of John Carpenter as, and he's also referred to as the master of horror, right?
Yeah.
And this one definitely still has horror elements in it. They Live, that is.
Sure.
But, it is, more firmly grounded in this idea of a Western,
Noir, right?
Film noir, for sure. And then, obviously, all the sci-fi stuff.
Mm-hmm. Hard sci-fi. I mean, it takes a turn. It's like kind of a From Dusk Till Dawn type turn. Carpenter pulls the rug out from under you, and all of a sudden people are being transported to Andromeda.
Yeah. You're like, wait, what?
What just happened?
Sort of bend and light sort of deal.
Can Roddy Piper take his shirt off again?
You look like your head fell on the cheese dip back in 1957.
I feel like there's another thing about collaborators that I'm forgetting.
Well, he did collaborate with the writer Frank Armitage to write this script. Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Is that his it says Richard Bachman? His moniker, right? Yeah.
Right. Did he do that with Prince of Darkness too, or did he say he wrote that?
I was going to ask you that, and I think so, because I feel like I see it again in the title sequence. Maybe not, though.
Yeah. Well, and this is definitely we've got the classic John Carpenter font on this one again.
It's a great font. How ahead of the game was he at all fucking time? That's why The Thing didn't work, because people were a year out from even understanding how awesome it was, at least. Yeah. Until like you said, VHS, and they got it. And I think this is, like you said, this is when he just picked himself back up and was like, here I am, remember me? And these two movies together are just awesome when they came out.
Well, it's interesting. So sticking on the release part of it too, it's like, I don't remember what Prince of Darkness did at the time or whatever, but I know They Live, when it came out, was the number one movie at the box office 2 weeks in a row.
That's awesome.
And according to Keith David in several interviews, he was like, yeah, it was number one 2 weeks in a row. I mean, Keith David talked about how he kind of started his career with The Thing and was really hoping it would launch him into something else, but The Thing, bombed at the box office, and
he got Men at Work.
Calls were not coming in as much as he was expecting. But then They Live comes along, gets cast in that, and it took off, was like number one at the box office 2 weeks in a row, and then as Keith David describes it, all of a sudden it just disappears. You couldn't find it in the theaters anymore. And it was like...
It didn't have like a video release either?
Well, they had very firm windows before video releases back then.
It's like a year.
It was several months. It was it would go like, let's say 6 months before you could get it on an HBO,
depending on how awesome the movie was, still raking in the cash,
or a pay-per-view type of thing. Yeah, and then it would be another 3-4 months before you could get it on VHS or whatever.
I hated when a movie was doing that well. I'm like, I'm never gonna get this copy,
Yeah. Yeah. No. I know. And then
it's not gonna be at Suncoast.
But it was like it just disappeared. His theory was something along the lines of like, it pissed someone off, this movie, and all of a sudden it's sort of no longer available, even though it's making money.
They Live was #1 in the country in the movie theaters for about 2 weeks. There was something kind of significant about the way it just dropped out. You couldn't find it in any theaters. And as I was talking to some of the cast, I said, this movie must have pissed somebody off.
I mean, it's firmly, right? It's pretty political. It's very much a sign of the times when it was coming out. I mean, this is a clear message to, I'd say, Reagan and his administration, right? I mean, that's pretty much his target in this.
Yeah, well, and all the bosses, everybody. So it's like, anybody who would be in charge to like, if the corporation who would be like, okay, I think we've had enough of this film. Thank you.
It's very society, right? It's like the rich are just basically getting rid of any middle or lower class by giving the lower class, like Buck Flower, a little bit of scratch and a nice new suit and make him feel like he's part of the elite group. But they're going to terraform our planet eventually, and then they're going to wipe us all out anyway, and everyone's going to look all fucking skeletal like these guys.
Well, see, like no one actually changes into that, which is interesting. So I kind of had that impression too.
Interesting.
Watching this the first couple of times,
I thought it was like over time they evolved into that. Like they were humans that kind of are just wasted down to life. Yeah. Okay,
they were. I mean, if you listen to at one point they talk about how there's that bearded guy on the television transmission, which reminds me of Dawn of the Dead a little bit.
Oh, this movie is an homage to Romero for sure.
Yeah. And it like reminds me of Prince of Darkness a little bit too. It's like they're hacking that signal in. That's another connection. But the bearded guy was like kind of like the bearded guy on the talk show in Dawn of the Dead that keeps playing on TV with funny theories. And he talks about how they came here, are ruining our planet, and our atmosphere, and our climate, and that's why we get to enjoy 108 degree days on September and October.
This movie was so perfect. Going through the hottest part of this summer here in 2024.
Yeah, it's a treat. And they recruit and essentially buy humans off
they're buying us off. Yeah.
To extract maximally from humanity and the planet itself.
The resources, and they're like locusts, and they'll move on to the next one and do it again.
I was just about to say, it's very much like what ended up being an Independence Day. Yeah.
The poor and the underclass are growing. They have created a repressive society, and we are their unwitting accomplices.
So was this the first kind of adaptation, or his own version of the adaptation? And it's mentioned in the credits, but it's not a direct adaptation of the 8 o'clock in the morning graphic novel, right? This is more his kind of take of it, or is it?
Yeah, it is. It's an adaptation, and I think even during Nada's walk into Nada, who's like not named in the movie,
not once, right? Okay,
not
so
once.
I want okay.
It's like you see his name in the credits, like Roddy Piper as Nada or whatever,
but they don't say his name.
They don't say his name.
That feels very Western, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially what we were just talking about, the man with no name story.
Literally, he's got nada, nothing.
He blows into town in the opening credits, and it's very much that sort of Western archetype. That's for sure.
Felt very Nick Cage going into Red Rock West there, trying to find some work. Same kind of thing.
It's same kind of deal. He's Mr. Honest, and trying to be, the best of us type of thing.
But Roddy Piper's honesty comes out in some of amazing one-liners, and the way that he commentates on what is actually happening to him. He really feels real, and it's like, it's so absurd what's happening. But when he's in that like grocery store and he sees that girl, you look great.
Yeah.
You're real fucking ugly.
But
I mean, that's exactly, you're just like, Jesus, it's disgusting.
I've got one that can see.
Yeah, I love that woman. She's so scary, right?
You see, I take these glasses off. She looks like a regular person, doesn't she, huh? Put them back on, formaldehyde face.
And she's got that fur coat on.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, see, this one, as we talk about it, it starts getting into that, like, top 3, top 2 of, like, Carpenter films, maybe.
Right.
Maybe his best in, like, thematically and, like, how deep it goes. And, like, it's really awesome. But it does kind of feel a little like Society took a little of that from this. Obviously went in a little bit more disgusting of a direction with it.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of thing.
Very similar ideas. It's like, in societies, they, as they said, that like they are not like us, and but they do feed off of us the way that they do in They Live.
Right.
I've got one that can see.
But going back to the sort of opening credit sequence where we got the hero blowing into town, you had asked about, like, did they credit the original story? And during that sequence where he's sort of walking to the employment office, it does say, based on the story by 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, oh, that's funny. That sounds like 10 o'clock people. And I had never seen the movie. I didn't know anything about They Live. I was just, watching it because, John Carpenter fan and loved Halloween, loved The Thing, and loved Assault. And it was like, this one, actually going back to its like existence on home video, like it was a VHS release. Same with Prince of Darkness, and those were like pan and scan, and not always. It's like not the best quality for a film shot in scope, which means essentially you can only see about a third of the frame when you see it in pan and scan.
4:3.
When you see the 4:3, and this is maybe into the days of DVD, and this one took so long to come out on DVD, and it actually came out in DVD in Europe first, and I was so excited to find both Prince of Darkness and They Live in Europe when I was there right after high school, and snatched them and brought them home, and had to buy a region-free player or whatever to be able to watch them. But it was like, it wasn't for a few more years that it finally came out on...
It's a PAL.
Yeah, exactly. And that it finally came out on sort of regular, I don't know what, North American DVD. But it was like, it's like not around for a long time.
Right.
Despite it being like such like a hit in theaters and, like a cult hit.
Suppressed.
Yeah.
Come on.
How do you explain it?
Come on. That's the only way. You fucking kidding me on this show?
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about some government conspiracy holding down something we love.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
The feeling is definitely there. It's a new morning in America. We have faith in our leaders. We're optimistic as to what becomes of it all. It really boils down to our ability to accept.
It was definitely a Carpenter adaptation. Carpenter had adapted before. He had done Christine, right?
Right.
The Thing, which was...
Oh, that's right.
A remake.
That was technically based on a book, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Who Goes There?
Yeah. So Who Goes There? It was made into the Howard Hawks produced...
But he remade the movie, really, right?
Movie in the 50s, and then he remade that because it was, it was a Universal property or whatever.
Oh, right.
And then, supposedly went back to the book for some of the inspirations and some of the things they couldn't do. I don't know if you've seen the original Thing, but it's like...
he's a plant.
He's a plant. He's like a carrot monster or something.
He's a vegetable. Yeah, he's a carrot. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a tuber or something, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it was like feeding the plant's blood. Like it had like...
Right. Feed me, Seymour.
Totally. Yeah. That's a good movie though. It's got a lot of creep factor to it, and
yeah,
like you could tell why it's a classic.
It's totally different. Yeah, and it's like I
beautiful too.
I could understand, if you were in love with the original, watching the Carpenter one and be like, what the hell is this? Because it's so different. But you also just have to kind of embrace that it's different, and it's amazing. But
Cronenberg did it successfully,
slobbering over it the whole time. It's like, it's been, it's one of the best to ever do it.
I guess Cronenberg did remake, though, The Fly story. Because it was just a very disgusting and more 80s version of that. But it was the same concept.
Similar situation. Like, let's do it, but grosser. Yeah.
That's disgusting.
I did want to talk about how insane it must have been to shoot and how expensive it must have been to shoot. And I know if he's doing this on an independent budget, but especially that grocery store scene, that entire set had to be built twice.
Right.
One in the color version without the glasses, and then
twice,
the Obey version.
Right,
and,
right.
Like, everything needed to be redressed, and the items on the shelves, and there was that big pan of the entire place that they kept doing. Like, Kibbe was going to work, and so was their production design team.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely different than Big Trouble, where 90% of that movie is on stages. This one was shot on They Live is shot on location for most of it, and then very rarely, like
they had to build that one.
That one was one of the only ones they built.
Yeah,
and it was everything else was like
it's like the whole budget of the movie.
Those tunnels underground actually are real. It's a real thing.
Aren't those just like a basement somewhere? Like,
it was like to connect municipal buildings in downtown LA.
Yeah, just like a steam tunnel kind of thing.
Yeah, they do exist, and people can walk, or used to be able to walk through them. I think disrepair and whatever.
Looks like where Day of the Dead was filmed. Those chase scenes at the end.
yes, right. But even like the ballroom at the end, or whatever. Like all that stuff was shot on location. But I'm pretty sure that grocery store was one of the rare examples of it being a set.
It's a great set, and it really feels like, and I mean, I don't know if you hear at one point there's like a mention on one of those TV broadcasts, and they're like, is this some sort of George A. Romero or John Carpenter thing or whatever?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But that scene in the grocery store when they finally find out Roddy Piper can see, and they start radioing each other, it feels very Night of Living Dead at that point, because it goes full black and white, and you've just got shambling skeletal things slowly creeping after.
I don't like this one bit. Not one bit.
Yeah. He's so good in this, man. Like, it's so odd that was chosen for this.
It is really odd.
You could totally see Kurt Russell being in this role, right? Like, he probably should have been, but it makes this movie so unique because he's in it. And Keith David's such a good actor against him that it makes that fight scene, while kind of a silly fight scene, almost slapsticky, it's fucking awesome, and it's badass, and it's grounded, and it's like they're really delivering what's happening, and they're just a great pair.
And it's like, maybe we'll get to the fight scene a little bit later, but like
in about an hour.
What also is great about that is, what also is great about that is that the like it's two friends fighting, so it adds this other sort of layer to it.
Wait!
Hey! You better find yourself someplace to hide and keep praying nobody ever finds you.
Put these on.
Hey! Stay away from me!
I'm telling you, you dumb son of a...
It would have been great to see the bemulleted Kurt Russell do this role, because it's like, he's sort of John Carpenter's it's like Akira Kurosawa had Toshiro Mifune, and Martin Scorsese as Robert De Niro, and Kurt Russell is the sort of personification of John Carpenter, and he plays the everyman so well, Kurt Russell, that is. But it's like, there's something so much more interesting about this, is like, you really feel like Piper is the sort of working poor. He's seen a lot of shit. He's got scars all over his face and
shredded.
He's just he is dude.
He's
so shredded.
Those shirtless scenes in this movie, he is jacked. Dude, I forgot about that.
You're like, oh, he looks like a normal guy. Oh, no.
Because they got him in that big flannel and the boots and everything, and he's kind of like lumbering around, and it's no big deal. All of a sudden, for some reason, he's at the end of the day, he's the only one with his shirt off at the yard. The guy's telling him, you can't stay here again tonight.
No, he was the only one putting in an honest day's work,
Okay, when do I get paid then? Thursday.
Yeah. No sleeping on the site. Yeah, exactly. That guy. Park your ass somewhere else tonight.
It's really telling when those little side lines are the ones that we remember so clearly in these movies. Like, it's just...
Oh, yeah.
It's the ghost notes of the entire piece. It's like...
Just that idiot licking his nuts again.
Is that Buck Flower?
George? Yeah.
Crazy drunk driver. Back to the Future was just down, too. It's funny.
Blow it out your ass.
Yeah, there's something just about Roddy Piper that, like, you know, you could believe that he is this down and out guy, whereas I think even, you know, the more rugged Kurt Russell, the like Escape from New York Kurt Russell or the McCready Kurt Russell, it's like, you know, there's a hard edge to it, but it is not the same thing as like what you're getting out of Roddy Piper, where his everyman, you know, feels like it's a lot more hard luck, a lot less movie star than Kurt Russell could even bring to it. It's weird, like, you know, to play it the way he does. And also, like, there's this thing that is so interesting about his character, because, you know, when he starts shouting and really starts getting into it, like, you start eating that trash can and all these things, like, you know, it's like, okay, now he's cutting a promo. This is WWE type thing. And, you know, he's like in his element. But, like, that rage that comes out there is just barely being held back, you know, with, like, you know, a dental floss. It's just like barely like holding it together. And, like, you know, and it's like just underneath the surface of everything he says, even when he's being polite about, okay, well, let me talk to the shop steward. And like, you know, and please, sir, and all these things. It's like, you know, but you can tell that just it's like just
boiling
a hair's breadth away from, like, you know,
boiling
snapping
underneath the surface there.
And part of it is, like, you know, his inexperience as an actor type of thing of, like,
but it works.
You know, it's such like perfect casting, because it just like it sort of naturally works that way, where he gets into it a little bit more, like, you know, after they beat the shit out of each other, they're back at the hotel room, and he's like, you know, talking about how, you know, his dad used to beat the shit out of him down by the river and whatever, and like
felt real.
And, you know, there was a nice like moment there of like a character moment, and he sold that well. And then right when we're getting out of that, he's like, you know, I can't remember what he's like. I'm not Papa's little boy anymore. Isn't it? There's hell to pay. It's like he's ready to, like, you know, it's like
boy no more. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like every single thing he delivers is like at the drop of a hat, he will be that guy. Yeah. He'll be, you know, like,
turn on a
it's
dime.
Fight or Flight, and this guy is Mr. Fight. You know, it's like, so
I mean, he starts blowing people away the second he gets a gun in this movie. He does not give a shit.
Figures it would be something like this.
Yeah, he's like you said, he's seen it all. We get that impression, and then all of a sudden, when it's this mind-blowing thing, he's like, of course it's going to be something as fucking insane as this. Right. Literally, people we can't see are operating and really running the world. And everything you believe for the last however long these things have been here is all bullshit. Every bit of it.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah. It does suck.
Because I ain't Daddy's little boy no more.
This is also a guy who, you know, as he explains in the movie and a little more in the script, and I'm probably going to get a couple of those details confused, so stop me if there's something doesn't sound familiar.
Okay.
Because before the show, I read the script, and it's available online. Like, it's like it's a printout and like this sort of like not so great scan of it, and it's got, you know, margin notes and things like that sometimes. And
oh, cool.
It's really cool, and it's a really, if you're a fan of They Live, definitely read the script. It's really interesting that, you know, there's just certain moments that they maybe even shot and cut out, like when Keith David and Roddy Piper are first at Justiceville, the homeless shelter, and they're after dinner chatting. Both of them go on about their backstories a little bit more, and it's like, you know, he's talking about
steel mills were laying people off left and right. They finally went under. We gave the steel companies a break when they needed it. Know what they gave themselves? Raises.
Piper turns the table and starts telling his backstory. And what's interesting is in the movie we get very, very little of that. The only thing we get is that his dad, you know, was beating him and treating him like shit.
Oh, there's more to that.
Yeah, and you know, we understand, you know, how he came from Colorado or whatever. He tells the woman at the employment office,
employment agency. Yeah, she was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I felt so bad you just feel bad for this guy from the get-go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing is, like, you know, you see a lot of things where he, you know, has got a lot of you know, hard luck. Everything that like could have gone wrong did go wrong in his life, and that sort of landed him at this place. And then so
literally the worst luck.
Yeah, yeah. So it is, like,
but it did put him in a position to be the hero of the day, right?
Yeah, this wouldn't have happened to another character. Like if it was the Peter Jason character in this situation or whatever, like he wouldn't have, you know, gone to the bank and blown those guys away. He wouldn't have, you know, gone to try to find the signal or whatever. Like,
and Keith David would have had a much better death, if anything, like that. Meg Foster.
Meg Foster, yeah.
Meg Foster just put a bullet in the back of his head, and that was the end of it. It was like, oh man, he deserves so much more.
Man, how much of a shock was that the first time you saw that?
Where it was totally, like, yeah.
You're like, oh, they're getting away, and you're like, wait, what?
But watching it now, I'm like, how the hell did he trust her after she basically threw him out of a window?
Right. Well, you know, it's because there was that little apology scene.
She was defending herself.
When you're first watching it, you're like, okay, this is great because this is just like the sort of makeup scene where, like, you know, the characters are going to fall in love more here, and you know, for her, as it turns out, it was just a, you know, manipulation tactic, and
really slick.
You know, it's sort of done really well. Like, you know, the movie's so lean,
yeah,
and still is able to put all those pieces together and have you like fully believe it. It's man, I don't know. It's up there. It is up there in the Carpenter canon.
It's awesome. There's huge set pieces. There's little character moments, like you said, or more intimate character moments. Comedy throughout this entire thing. The action is always good. The horror is good. It's genuinely scary, and the sci-fi. I used to think, even back in the day, I was like, oh, that scene when they get to the radio station and they find out what this thing is.
Some kind of lens thingy.
Exactly. It's like literally they're like a bus station, right?
Yeah.
And so like you see these guys going off and getting zapped off to different stars in the middle of space, right?
Yeah.
I always thought that was so cheesy back in the day. Watching it now, I was like, it wasn't so bad. It was kind of Akari XB1. It was a little circular and like angular and like kind of simple, but 60s or like old sci-fi visions of the future kind of feel.
Which is, and what's also cool is, like, under that tunnel thing, I can't remember, like Buckflower says, like, oh, it's kind of funky, but, you know, essentially it's the place where the alien overlords and then the people that are in on it can let their hair down and not worry about, you know, people seeing them or whatever.
Right.
And so they just have this very open, unmasked transit system there, and
because they got through there by using one of their devices, right? It opened up that portal and it created that hole in the floor, and that's the only way that they could have gotten in.
Right. The sort of Mario Brothers like hole.
So they were trusted immediately. Exactly. Totally Mario Brothers, yeah. I like when that one guard, Buckflower's like, hey, do you mind if I give them the tour? He's like, be serious. You have your authorization cards?
Right.
Here's our authorization.
Yeah.
It's such a Rambo ending by the time they get to the into the radio station or the TV station.
Yeah.
Hey, fellas, I got a couple of my buddies here. Thought I'd give them the grand tour. Think we can go inside?
Be serious. You have your authorization cards.
Right here.
Watch the door.
Speaking of the shooting script.
Oh, yeah.
You know, obviously the way the movie ends, they, you know, the Meg Foster betrayal's up there, and then, you know, he blows her away. The helicopter takes a shot at him. He still gets off the shots at the satellite or whatever, and destroys the beam or whatever that makes the aliens look like humans.
And we can see who's running the whole damn thing. Yeah.
The cat totally out of the bag at that point.
The veil has been lifted.
Yeah.
And now, even now, when every word of what Wygan has said on our show is printed, the cat totally out of the bag, you're still standing here debating.
But it's funny, in the movie, in the script, as Meg Foster is, you know, getting shot, like, she gets off a shot but misses him. The helicopter is like, okay, back away, 3, 2, 1, and then not a shoots at and like throws a grenade at the satellite dish or whatever. And that's sort of the last we see, because then it's the montage of like, here's all these different scenarios where the movie critics and the politician and the guy at the bar and the
the mask is off.
And then there was one other instance that I think didn't get filmed, or maybe they just cut it out in editing, I don't know. And then it's like, hey baby, what's the problem, or whatever, like, and then instead of cut to credits, it was like cut to a title card, and it was like, the revolution got kicked off that night by a homeless guy named John Nada. And it was interesting because it was like, in the script, it more or less made him the sort of John Connor figure to fight back against the machines or something, because he
started the resistance.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't necessarily die on the roof up there. Whereas in the movie, it very much, I don't know, it very much feels like
Hero's ending and Hero's death. I mean,
yeah, he's donezo, and not only because he got blasted from the cops in the helicopter, but also because the thing blew up in his face, the satellite dish.
In green flame. Just like the end of Big Trouble. Yeah.
And so it's like, very much unlike Rambo's and other 80s action movie heroes, like, he dies in the end. He doesn't
walk away from the explosion.
Blow away the bad guys, walk away from the explosion, pick up his daughter on his shoulder and, do the commando thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Alyssa Milano comes out of nowhere, puts her on her shoulder. As he takes out all the guards that had PKE meters from Ghostbusters.
Another indication they didn't have unlimited resources. They're like recycling props.
What? This thing can find ghosts, communicate, and find humans.
Yeah, exactly.
Or something.
Yeah. We got the terrorists, all right. Like the two guards high five.
We got them. We wiped them out. All right. It's a win, man. They got to meet the A-team.
It is wild, like how much, there are thrills and things before we find the aliens, but the biggest sort of action set piece previous to that was the sort of stormtrooper raid, blowing down Justiceville.
Assault on Precinct 13 there.
Yeah. But maybe other than that, it's like, it was more about this guy's sort of blown into town, just really how out of options people are, and just like you feel the squeeze the hardest at the bottom of the ladder here.
That feels like the noir part of this script.
And it definitely feels like the film noir thing. But as an action movie or as a sci-fi movie, like, there's so much, like, there's like almost half an hour or something before he gets the glasses on.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It's got that From Dusk Till Dawn. This is one kind of movie, and all of a sudden, you might change. When he gets you are really from his perspective throughout. This is a really strong character perspective film from his perspective.
Right. I mean, you do get I feel like you do get a couple. No, not really. Like, there was that scene where it was like, Peter Jason is talking to people in the church, but he's overhearing that in the next room.
Exactly, because he can hear. That's when he starts hearing that church choir that they've got on the speakers, and they're talking underneath it. Peter Jason's great. He's just so awesome in these movies.
I know. I love his like whistling or whatever in Prince of Darkness. Was Peter Jason in the stock company before Prince of Darkness? I think he was. He did sort of join up into the Carpenter stock company at Prince of Darkness. Then it's like They Live. He's in Mouth of Madness, of course. Village of the Damned. I forgot about that. Oh yeah, definitely Escape from L.A.
Right.
Yeah.
The world needs a wake-up call. We're gonna phone it in.
But it's like, the movie, just going back to that point about like, it doesn't even, how different it was from the action movies of the 80s. Like, some of the explosions and some of the set pieces were, a lot more muted compared to, say, Commando or Rambo or some of these things.
Steven D'Souza written film, you mean?
Yeah.
Right.
I thought you were going to say Steven Seagal. Yeah, or whatever. But, yeah, it's a little different than some of those, but it also like starts a lot slower. But I mean, it takes you there, and at least for the first 2 weeks was number one for those 2 weeks.
That is so cool to hear.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so glad people got it and went to see this one.
Yeah, and it's like for a movie starring a guy who, wasn't a movie star, and he's, fully the lead in this thing. And like you said, like everything's from his perspective. I wasn't familiar with him. Like, I didn't grow up watching wrestling. I was aware of, certain
I was
people,
aware,
like,
yeah.
Andre the Giant and, what's his name? Macho Man. And
that was probably the class of wrestlers that I watched the most of.
Hulk Hogan. Yeah.
Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan and those, that group. But I didn't know much of them, yeah.
But I mean, for me, it was like, I knew Roddy Piper from They Live, It's
exactly,
like,
same, yeah.
It's like, yeah.
I guess you could also say from Frogs in Nuketown or whatever that.
Hell Comes to Frogtown?
Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Yeah.
He was gone too soon, right? Wasn't he? Didn't he die young? Roddy
Yeah.
Piper? In 2015. He was only 61. I mean, I'm assuming, as most of those folks around that time, there was probably a lot of weight around his heart by the time he passed on. So, and judging by the size of him and They Live, he was on about 3 or 4 cycles during that movie.
Yeah, and apparently he did have cardiac arrest. So there you go.
There you go.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Just tying up this idea that, like, he was as Roddy Piper, that is, as the movie star of this thing. It's like there weren't any big names in the movie. It still, managed to climb to number 1.
Except Peter Jason, of course, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah, Peter Jason,
right?
And the 6th on the call sheet of the thing, Keith David.
But some of the people from Big Trouble in Little China did make it. I think they're in the background. There's some of the resistance soldiers helping out.
Yeah,
Peter Jason's
and
great.
Jeff Amata also did a lot of the stunts and things in Big Trouble in Little China. So it's like, definitely some of those people came back to work with him. But it's not as if, they had giant names in any of the roles there. And I wasn't familiar with Meg Foster at the time of watching this.
Oh.
But it was she was very standout to me in this one.
To me, she is Eva Lynn from Masters of the Universe.
Okay.
And she is also the
right.
mother in the movie Blind Fury, the Rutger Hauer film. Do you know that one?
Okay. No. I was thinking of a samurai film, but yeah, okay.
It kind of is a samurai film,
okay.
Actually. He's a blind samurai protector, Rutger Hauer. But Meg Foster plays the mother of the kid that he ends up having to protect, and that's
cool.
It's those icy blue eyes she's got. It's just so.
I mean, it looks like contacts. They're just like,
and it's not. Those are her natural eyes. They look white.
They look white. Yeah, exactly.
They look
it's
silver white. Like, yeah.
She also, was very much the very strong and clever and witty, resourceful, Carpenter lead female character that we've come to know and love from movies like Assault on Precinct 13. That was the Laurie Zimmer character.
Sure.
The Lauren Hutton character in Somebody's Watching Me. It is very much that type of, everything she was saying was like so on point, and so like she was able to like maintain her cool in stressful situations. She was like, hey, look, I'll look through your sunglasses, okay? And if I don't see what you want me to see, I'll see it anyway. It's like,
right.
She's like, yeah.
I'm gonna bullshit you, dude. Yeah. You got a gun in my face.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, I've had a bad day. He's like, well, no, you are in charge here. And like, it's like, you've got 2 guns. You're in charge. Yeah.
Really good writing.
Yeah. No, it's great. And also just, it was like, it's so refreshing. Just as in terms of, the classic movie scenario of someone gets kidnapped and is
Ray Don Chong falls in love with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and for some reason, or Total Recall, right, and all those things, like same kind of situation.
So it's a little of that where it's like it's kind of refreshing. Like they did have sort of their chemistry moment in the middle there we talked about, but when she's being kidnapped, it was like so low key. Like she just like maintained cool. Yeah. And as it turns out, like, because she turned out to be sort of this femme fatale and, working for the winning team, as it was described, it also, all of that made sense as well, that, not only, it's like, if the movie was told from her perspective, her having this like sort of heroic countenance with everything she's doing would make more sense. But because she was this side character, and it was the John Nada story we were following, it was like so striking that she wasn't screaming, she wasn't like upset, she wasn't hyperventilating.
A damsel, right?
She wasn't damsel in distress. She was in distress, but
sure.
she was
but
like,
she wasn't. She could handle her shit.
She was handling it much better than anyone else would have. And there's something like so romantic in the classical sense about that as a character. It's like she's like so ice cold under pressure and whatever, and able to outwit everybody, and it's this really, really cool breath of fresh air for that type of character that you just don't see as much of, and it's like
it's her eyes, man.
It's
her eyes.
It's her eyes. Yeah,
that's the icy coldness. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's just like she maintained that zen with her face too. It was like everything was like this tight little smile, and okay, well, I will look through your sunglasses and all that stuff.
I love this is my favorite of Meg Foster for sure.
Yeah.
Look, things turned out a little sour for me today.
Well, you're not the only one.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. But I needed you to get away.
No. You have 2 guns. You're not sorry. You're in charge.
Well, let's finally do this. Let's get into the aspect of this movie that put it in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Is that right?
I think so, because I at least up until the mid 2000s or something. I don't know if it's been broken since then, but up until that point, it was definitely in the Guinness Book of World Records as the longest, hand-to-hand combat, fight scene
on film, or is that like how? Okay, so
yeah.
Has anyone clocked it? I didn't even look that up.
But it is the fight scene in this movie about Nada trying to get Frank to, put on the goddamn glasses and see this thing.
Because you're not going to put Roddy Piper in a movie as Carpenter was a wrestling fan, obviously.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to put him in a movie without giving him 6 minutes of ring time, right?
Yeah.
And it's real. Like, it's the clotheslines and the suplexes and the German lifts and drops and all that, atomic drops and all that shit.
Right.
They pull it all out in that scene. And it's on concrete. I know there's some moments where you see a few boards here and there, but those dudes are going at it in the middle of an alley. Like, it's
wild
raw.
how much it looks like both of them are doing it. I mean,
and they look like they are hurting during it or after. And that one scene when Roddy Piper's got that one fat lip, and it kind of goes away the next one, but he's got a fat lip, and it's like, dude, that looks like it hurt.
Yeah.
Keith David just fucking with those big fucking fists he's got, dude.
Yeah. Get away from me, you crazy mother! Yeah,
oh, he's so good. I got a wife and kids.
No, I love how Nada goes up to the construction site, goes to find Frank, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna tell you this crazy thing. You won't believe it." And he's like, "Hey, wait a second. How many people did you kill? You psycho! Get out of here!" And,
seriously, he was murdering everybody.
And then Nada comes back into the alley and runs into the trash compactor from the Never-Ending Story, where it's just papered goods. Yeah.
Luckily, there's no food being thrown out that day.
It's a good thing it was just the Iron Mountain truck, where it's just shredded paper.
Just printer paper.
Yeah. There's no. There's
so true. Just shredded in different directions. It's like
there's no old soup or dirty diapers or just awful shit you find in trash cans.
Typical.
Yeah. And he grabs, he finds the box of Hoffman lenses glasses.
The box that never gets crushed and never gets taken away. This box of glasses tends to stay there in this alley. Yeah. But then he hid it out though, didn't he?
Yeah, he hid it in the sort of metal trash can area in that alley, and then he happened to catch the guys picking it up, and and
starts driving away with him in the back of the truck.
Yeah,
so good.
So Nada tries to get Frank to look through the glasses, and thus begins the one of the best or maybe possibly the best hand-to-hand combat fight in all of cinema. And it goes on and on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And just when you think it's over, it starts up again. It's like, it's crazy how long
I mean, it ends, I think, 3 different times.
Yeah.
And then something happens where they just do a little trip on the guy trying to get up, or like they'll just smack the guy in the face as they're moving, and then it's on again. It's like it doesn't end.
Right.
Like, I don't know how the hell they did that.
Like, I mean, they must have been shooting that one for a week. It was
rehearsals took weeks, I guess, 3 weeks. I mean, that was like a month-long scene, you know, from start to finish. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's not really needed. It's just really unique for the movie, right? Like, it's just a really cool moment.
Right. Well, and you felt like if there were suits involved or there was studio interference, they'd be like, "Can we trim down this scene? Can't we get rid of some of this? Like, how long does this thing need to go on?"
It's comically long.
It's like,
great.
exactly. It's like, there are all these like different, beats and acts to the fight, and I love how like they're trying to do like gentlemanly rules, like put your fists up, boxing type of thing, put your dukes up, and like they're hitting each other in the body and the face, and like at one point like Piper gets knocked down and then goes to like punch Frank in the nuts.
Oh, you dirty motherfucker!
Yeah. And then at another stage of the fight, after that, it was like Frank has Nada on the ground, and like it looks like he's about to fuck him missionary style, but he just like winds back, like
the back knees,
the sort of 1930s pitcher, and just like knees him in the nuts like 27 times,
just like rearing back like a horse, like a donkey, crushing his nuts, dude. Those guys beat the hell out of each other.
And he's like, oh!
I forgot about the dirty motherfucker. Because he gives him one of those like Johnny Cage punches to the balls, right? Yeah.
And when he stops it from happening.
Right.
But like that's one of those moments where there's this pause in the fight.
Yeah.
To be able to like say,
great blocking. Yeah.
And then what else is great is like all these different stops in it, including the part where like he grabs a 2x4 because he's just like he's like a bull seeing red, and like he like swings it at him, it smashes that car window, and he's like, oh my god, and then he's like, wait, oh, I'm sorry, and like it's like coming to his senses, and like
oh man, I'm sorry. Fuck.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, one of the greatest fight scenes ever, and every time I see it, every single time I see it, I've seen this movie at least 5-6 times. Every time it's fun, and every time there's something funny about it. I think it's a really good fight, too. It feels really visceral and not like some bullshit wrestling match.
Yeah, well, and it's not like
a studio fight.
Yeah, like there's no kung fu in it where it's like you're looking at two masters squaring off or something like that. It's like
it's pretty dirty.
It's just it's you dirty motherfucker.
Yeah.
For 10 minutes of just
it's
like
a street fight,
swinging and like brawling and like exactly like
awesome.
Yeah, it's really unique in that sense too, where it's like, again, unlike the sort of Rambos and Commandos where these are the best possible fighters in the world. No, these are just two regular dudes fighting. and then on top of it, there's that thing we mentioned earlier where like they're friends, so it's like there's only they're not going to take it all the way. They're not literally trying to kill each other.
They get pretty close though during this scene. Yeah.
Not trying to kill each other.
Right.
Brother, life's a bitch. She's back in heat.
I guess one last thing I wanted to bring up real quick was, and this will be if you guys are huge Brian Foster completist fans, you will have already heard this from the last time that he and I talked about this movie. But I wanted to bring up, because we have so many Stephen King fans in our midst, how this movie, They Live, was based on a movie or a short story called 8 O'Clock in the Morning, which was then adapted into a, like 8-page comic book called Nada, and then that was what was adapted into this movie. And in each of those iterations, the monsters are very different, and they look different. And the 8 o'clock in the morning, it's like this guy goes to a convention and is in an audience where the entire audience was getting hypnotized. Taking us back to Sirhan.
Cool, yeah.
Yeah. But like in this one, he kind of Carpenter, that is, didn't want to do that and wanted to have it to be this like slower, peeling back of everything, and kind of like we were talking about with the film noir aspect of it, and then like the glasses leading to the contacts, and then the whole thing of like it turning into like almost like this headache or this trip that people are on, and
like drugs, yeah.
The drugs.
Come down.
The come down, yeah, exactly. And, it's interesting because, like, the title of the short story is based on 8 o'clock in the morning, but every sort of beat of this story where it's like, a guy's going about his day-to-day life, gets thrown into this thing of, like, finding these creatures that from one day to the next went from like being a normal person to being these like hideous monsters in the clothes of this person that they once knew, and those people being attracted to power and high places, and there being an underground network of people fighting against it, and then them having a meeting, and that meeting gets disrupted and raided, and then to them like regathering and trying to bring this thing down.
It sounds like this movie.
It very much sounds like this movie. All those little story beats were also in a Stephen King short story in the Nightmares and Dreamscapes collection called The 10 O'Clock People. It is wild. Maybe perhaps for legal reasons he hasn't talked about it, but obviously Stephen King was familiar with John Carpenter's work, John Carpenter having adapted one of his novels,
sure,
before this, and he's also a horror fan or whatever, so he would have probably seen the Halloween of the Thing.
When was Nightmares and Dreamscapes published?
That was published in '93.
Okay, so well after this.
10 O'Clock People, I think the very first time it was published was like '91 or something like that, in like a
sure.
Magazine or something. And while it is possible that it was like something he came up with and just happenstance, whatever, it feels so unlikely, given that like it wasn't revealed in They Live that there was someone selling them out in their sort of Rebel Alliance meeting,
right?
But you can put the pieces together that the Holly Thompson, the Meg Foster character, did that.
Yeah.
In the Stephen King short story, like there's someone sort of explicitly like, they said we can work with them, and like like, and as they're getting blown away, but like it very much feels like something where he saw this movie and was quote unquote inspired,
sure,
to write that short story, which is fascinating. So, and for me, I had read that book before ever watching They Live, and I kind of clocked 8 o'clock in the morning. Oh, that's funny. The o'clock thing like stuck with me, and then I was like, wait a minute. As the thing was going on, I was like, wait a minute. Was the Stephen King story like had something to do with They Live? Was They Live? And because I had seen They Live after reading the story, I was like, oh, did he just rip off the Stephen King story? But no, I think the other way around. It's flipping around, because Stephen King was
reverse it.
Perhaps ripping off the number one movie of the fall of 1988 or whatever this was.
You start ingesting all this content and horror content, it's going to come back out in some sort of writing.
Yeah,
makes sense.
It's wild. But as far as I know, Stephen King and or John Carpenter, neither of them have kind of talked about how there is this very curious similarity between these stories.
Ain't love grand?
I think we got to the end here, and I think that we had a satisfying show. And I want to say thank you, Jeremy, for going on this journey together. I think that this has been fun. I think we've really kind of got into a groove on this show, and it's been fun to do. I know we've got family and things that get in the way in life, but it's fun to jump away and watch movies and talk about them. So I'm glad I got to spend the time.
No, absolutely. And for me, same. I just, I've as stressful schedule wise sometimes as it can be, as this fun little hobby of ours. It's one of those things where being forced to watch movies like this and then to talk about and defend and explore them and then have to articulate one's feelings about them has really really like sort of opened my eyes to certain things and I've definitely been inspired by this show. I watch a lot more horror movies now than I once did, and
Dude.
I definitely appreciate them a lot more.
I never watched any film noir.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. Exactly.
Yeah. And now it's like my favorite genre.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is one of those things where it's just like and we try to even though there are some places that kind of stretch our rule on this one, we try to stay pretty positive, as this is a celebration of film and filmmaking, and
some films suck, and it's a fun thing to celebrate that too, right?
Yeah, and sometimes they're undeniable.
I don't like Ghost of Mars, right? Like, that's not a favorite of mine, but I love Carpenter.
I ain't going back.
I ain't going back.
Was that an Ice Cube line?
Yeah, it was.
Ice Cube was in a John Carpenter.
Buckethead music, yeah, exactly.
God.
Jason Statham was in that too. Yeah, but it is a blast, and I have definitely enjoyed all our time together on the show, and looking forward to the next 100.
The next 100.
There we go.
I knew me and you had a lot in common. First time we met.
Thanks so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on any podcast platform and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next time.
Ciao.
You're a working man.
Yes, sir.
Here, it's the revolution. Let me show you.
I gotta be going right now.
This world may have blinded me, but the Lord has let me see. You'll be back. You'll be back.